Okay, so today we're going to be talking about tanks, and because I'm not a tank player, I got some help over here from Chinese knockoff Coach Birdie, as well as masochist extraordinaire, the tank god himself, RagTagg, to help me talk about our first impressions of the most recent tank. They're straight up tank nerfs, right? I mean, Reaper got buffed, which is a big thing, but also the nerf to armor is kind of massive. So we're going to be talking about that and just share our thoughts. Sound good, guys?
Yeah, man, go for it.
I guess.
Okay, so as it should be apparent that I'm not a tank player, I love playing Zenyatta, and it hasn't come completely under my radar what I am doing to other tanks. I'm that guy sitting there charging up that right click, waiting for the split second where the Reinhardt drops a shield, and I melt him. And I felt that on the other side. Playing tank is not always very fun, right? Like, people started pushing this narrative of like, oh, the poor tanks, they keep getting CC'd and juggle, and it's not fun to play, blah, blah, blah. And we forgot how dominant tanks were already in the past, especially when triple tank was a thing in, I think, Season 3. And then GOATs happened, and suddenly everyone hates tanks again. But I feel like we might have a similar situation to what happened with Mercy, where tanks are powerful, but they're not necessarily fun to play. Now, what do you think will happen to the remaining tank players once these nerfs are coming out on the live servers?
Are you asking me? Are you asking both of us? I'll go first.
Yeah, just go ahead.
I think that we've become comfortable with how we play tanks of late in the last few seasons, in particular, that they have had a much more sort of bombastic impact on the game. Therefore, they've become more than space enablers, more than, let's get our team to the point, and they've become very impactful. And now Blizzard just wants to smash that right in the freaking face and just get rid of it. So it feels to me like we need another adjustment period rather than. I think there's a lot of panicking going on. I mean, I'm panicking. I'm an Orisa main, and they've just told me that -5 reduction is down to -3, and Orisa has 200 armor and 200 health. So that's basically, yeah, that's a good portion of her armor is going to get chopped up pretty fast. So I think tank players are going to be very scared. I think tank players are going to adjust via fear first. And I think everyone needs to calm down. That's my initial reaction. And I am coming from someone, I've been out of Masters for the last 3 seasons or so, and I've only just got back there by literally cheesing with a Bastion, protecting that Bastion. And that's another hero that's getting it as well, because Bastion's got some armor as well, doesn't he?
Yep.
And yeah, so he'll be eating that right in the face as well. So I think once this goes live, and I don't see it not going live in its current state. When do Blizzard revert their PTR sort of changes? I don't think it's happened many times. Maybe a few. I think it definitely has happened once or twice, but not often. I see this is going through. So yeah, I think fear is going to be the first response. And I think Blizzard are going to have to ignore a lot of the whining until we work out exactly what's going on.
Now, we go from this, obviously, everyone's aware GOATS is this triple tank, triple support meta where it seems like on the outside it just run your face into the enemy, and more often than not, in lower ranks specifically, that just works. In higher ranks, there's more coordination that goes into GOATS, but really, it boils down to who can hold W harder. Now, from a coach's perspective, and also because, Birdie, I know you have played tank extensively before, what do you think how that is going to affect ladder play overall, in the sense that we go from what RagTagg assumes, we go from what we previously had in this very aggressive playstyle to what RagTagg assumes is more scared and cautious playstyle? What do you think how that's going to affect the ladder?
So, well, let me talk about a couple things first. You brought up how, like, GOATs, especially in lower elos, they like to just, especially when the initial GOATs comps that initially came out, geez, I can't talk, which was Moira GOATs that everyone traditionally knows, which is literally just slam your face into the enemy team. That's exactly how it was played.
Yeah, that combo was called Slambulance back in the day.
Yeah, it developed over time, though, and especially you look at the pro scene, and if you watch higher tier games, top 500 games right now, they always run Zen GOATs, and I don't think people understand why they run Zen GOATs, and it's mainly because with the target focus that you can get from Zen, it turns less into slam your face into the enemy team and slam your face into the enemy team when I tell you to, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because every first team fight, if you watch the games, every single first team fight when you're running a Zen Goats comp, they will always get a Discord orb on the Rhine after Zarya uses bubble, and then they will always rush the Rhine and then steamroll them from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start prioritizing targets based on like ult economy and stuff like that, and it's a whole bunch of mind games, and it's a big divergence in this Goats meta versus what we've previously seen in other metas as far as how the game's played. It's a lot more, there actually is a lot more thought that goes into it as far as like ult economy and stuff like that we haven't seen before. But that really has nothing to do with what we're really trying to talk about today. What we're really trying to focus on today is like tanks, and specifically how strong they are, and you know, maybe how this is going to take us away from the Goats meta. But like, it's something that you said before we even started was like, oh man, I can't wait to go from 3 tanks and 3 supports to 3 DPS and 3 supports. And I don't think that's going to happen, because I think the way most tank players and the way I'm looking at this see this is like, okay, they're nerfing armor. So how does this affect what tanks do in a way? And for some of them, I think it does affect them a lot. Like, I think RagTagg actually has a point with like Orisa. I think they need to probably give her like another extra 100 armor on top of what she already has in order to make her a little bit more viable. Yeah, just something to make her more viable, because, you know, if you thought Orisa got melted before, she's just going to get melted faster now.
Oh yeah.
She does have a good, she is better about keeping her shield up more than Reinhardt is, but she's so immobile compared to Reinhardt. Anyway, regarding the other tanks though, what do they do? Like, let me actually ask you, Cliff. Like, when you think of a D.Va player, what do you think that a D.Va's job is to do besides just have a lot of health? Because that's what tanks are.
I feel like D.Va's a lot about managing the battlefield. I feel like as a D.Va, you need to be aware of where your enemies are at all times, and then manage your DM accordingly, and then see like what the team is going to do. Like, if your Reinhardt wants to push aggressively, you need to DM that, because if you don't DM the Reinhardt moving forward without a shield, he's gonna melt. And then, I mean, the way I played, I don't think I should really compare that, because I play it completely ineffectively. I do a lot of, like, hunting. I'm not. But I do think that's reminiscent of what a lot of ladder players do, though, where they play D.Va, they use her massive health pool and her mobility just to be aggressive, right? And they're gonna start hunting. And I do wonder, because when first the whole CC meta was a thing, right, with getting Doomfist Juggle, getting Brigitte stunned, getting Sombra hacked all in succession, from an anecdotal perspective, we did see what felt like a decline in tank play, where literally tank players stopped playing tank or stopped playing the game entirely. And I'm not talking about top 500 or pro play right now, obviously, but in ladder play in general, where there was more triple DPS comps because nobody wanted to play a tank. Now I'm wondering, if everyone's already used to playing aggressively because of goats, what if they still play aggressively, but instead of doing it with tanks, they do it with DPS, which is why I jokingly said the whole triple deeps, triple support thing. Because if Reaper is so hard to kill, you're never going to want to run tanks into him, right? Because you're just feeding his self-heal, is what I'm thinking.
So let me start with the first point. Like,
what
you said about D.Va. You're actually exactly right. And D.Va has one of the like best peel kits in the entire game, with defense matrix and actually her boosters, like booping people away.
Yeah.
You know, something you don't see a lot of like quote unquote boosted D.Va players do is they don't, like, if a Genji Dragon Blades, they don't slam into him with their boosters, because that's something that a lot of people don't think about. Is they do the D.Va play, which is roll your forehead on the keyboard and just slam into the enemy team like Cliff does.
Yeah,
and instead of actually using our kit what it should be being used for. And so when you think about it that way, the nerf to armor really doesn't affect how the tank is supposed to be played versus how people are playing them right now, because they don't know actually how to play them. And I think the same thing goes for Reinhardt. Yes, he's going to lose that little bit of armor that he has first, but does that really matter? He barely has any armor at all anyway. I mean, what is it, like 150 of his health is armor? I don't even remember off the top of my head. I'm such a good coach. So he has a 2,000 HP barrier, though. That's not going away. That's still a thing that's going to be there and affecting the enemy team by creating space. With Zarya, she doesn't even have armor. She's literally not affected at all by this. So she's still going to synergize very well with Reinhardt in that sense. Like, I don't see this affecting tanks in the way that they're just going to be dying a lot more now. I see this affecting players and their ability to play the tanks in the way that they're supposed to. I'll give you an example of like a guy.
Okay, wait. So what you're saying essentially is that the way that I play tank, for example, which if you've seen my background gameplay of me playing tanks, I play very aggressively, very forward, don't even care to really protect. I'm just like space damage. That's like essentially what I'm trying to do, which if I do it at the wrong time, this is going to be more easily punished versus what essentially RagTagg does, where he plays a proper tank. Now, what I'm wondering for RagTagg specifically is that because you mentioned that you, quote-unquote, cheesed your way back up on the ladder with Bastion and Orisa, what do you think how that combo is going to be affected by these changes, considering both these heroes have armor?
Oh, it's going to get totally destroyed, but that's because of the way I've been doing it. I've been queuing with a one-trick Bastion since this season started, and we've just been doing some creative plays, and like just for example, like sitting on Volskaya in defense on the back left corner of the first point, and actually sitting behind the point, making the enemy come to us, and doing a lot of very, very good tricky halts. And I see the current changes as just affecting tanks in a more general way rather than that specific strat. I think if you know your way to get through an Orisa shield and a Bastion getting protected, you're going to get through it anyway. But I just think you'll get through it a hell of a lot faster with what's coming. So I think if I bring it into general terms of Orisa, in terms of like we don't have the Bastion there, or maybe we do, but it's not like the central to the strategy. If Orisa's holding a choke point, say in Volskaya again, at that truck or whatever, the speed at which the enemy can come through is obviously going to affect my reaction time as a tank player and my survival rate and all the rest of it. I think Orisa is going to get absolutely shredded because she's already too slow. She's already just doesn't have that kit to escape. Fortify, yeah, okay, it's handy for a very few short amount of seconds, but with the shredding of the armor as well, I just think that already I feel like I'm pretty good with halting people and controlling entry points and whatnot in a choke. I just think that when I'm approaching a tank like Orisa, I would maybe make another choice at this stage, given what they're putting in front of it. You can't take away half of a hero's health pool and say to that half of the health pool, we're going to take, what is it, something like if it's -5 to -3, I'm not sure of the math, but I think it is about 80 HP she's going to lose. So if you imagine a tank with 320 HP, I don't know if that's 100% right, but that's how it's going to feel to me, with the damage reduction. So I think from that point of view, I'll be looking to take Zarya or something else. I don't see 2 CP defense going so well if they don't make an allowance for Orisa's current health pool.
So what we seem to agree on is that Reinhardt Zarya, which is a very popular and common way of combining main and off tank, isn't really going to get affected a whole heck of a lot because Reinhardt doesn't have that much armor. He still has a shield, and Zarya is completely unaffected by that. But what seems like is going to happen, at least based on our first impressions, is that Orisa is probably going to suffer the most in the sense that she's going to feel much more squishier, especially if you cannot play her, let's say, in the most optimal way, which is to say that when the enemies know that you can just walk past the shield and shoot her, you're going to have a lot of trouble. But it's also potentially going to affect players who play tank not properly, right? Like we all know the stereotype of the feeding Roadhog, right? Who's like, hey, well, guess old batteries running back into the enemy team, just feed some more of that stuff that's going to kill us over and over again. And D.Va could potentially end up in the same spot. What do you think about that, Birdie?
As far as people being punished for feeding on tanks?
Yeah, like the next more mobile ult battery for the enemies, essentially. Because her DM got nerfed too, so we shouldn't forget that. Her DM got +1 cooldown.
Oh, yeah, that one's actually a bigger one, in my opinion, than the armor thing. Because, think about all the changes that D.Va's gone through, and she's still just up there in the meta.
Yeah.
You're basically adding twice as much delay in between the times that you can use Defense Matrix, which means that you can counterplay around D.Va using it. And, again, it's one of those things where Divas can't just roll their forehead across their keyboard and spam DMs all day. You have to intelligently think about when are you going to use this and why are you using it. If you're just absorbing damage that's going into a Reinhardt shield anyway, you're not really doing much versus, oh, look, the Zarya has Grav and you have no DM to eat it. And you totally could have, and you're a capable player of doing that, but you didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think of with like a lot of what mostly the off tanks do, not necessarily the main tanks of the game, is that they're really good at depleting enemy resources in a way that not other heroes can do. So like D.Va, for instance, with Defense Matrix, it's like, okay, you want to use that tack visor? No, that's not going to happen. Or you want to grab our team? No, that's not it, Chief. Yep. The Defense Matrix is hugely powerful with that. But even Roadhog, like I know you've had those games where your team is going in and the first thing they see is a Roadhog. And everyone's like, Roadhog, focus Roadhog. And he just never dies. The more that you guys are focusing Roadhog, the more resources you're using up to try and kill him. And the more that their team is going to be able to use to invest resources into focusing down one of you instead. And all the Roadhog is doing is existing because he's got 600 HP and take a breather, which gives him 50% damage reduction. I don't think that's a lot of things people consider when they think of Roadhog. Before the 5 bullets per magazine nerf, quote unquote, that Roadhog got, and before they had the 50% damage reduction on Take a Breather, he was more like a DPS. He wasn't really a tank, which is one of the things that evolved the triple tank meta, because that's how he was played, is as a DPS. But now it's like, no, he can be considered an ult battery, but at the same time, he's depleting resources from your team to try and kill him, and you're not making progress on that while the enemy team is killing you.
Especially
so
if there is a
he's
D.Va.
still a tank. Yeah, he's still very much a tank in that sense.
So how does Reaper play into that, though? Because
we haven't even talked about Reaper.
Because that's like the big thing next to D.Va being nerfed. If you think about how Reaper's going to potentially play into this, I mean, Orisa's going to feel squishier, but she can still shield dance. She still has hold. So there's a potential of maybe delaying the inevitable a little bit. But if you look at the big thing that made Reaper completely useless is D.Va. Because D.Va can turn away her head hitbox, Reaper suddenly doesn't do anywhere near enough damage to really do anything about her mobility get out or defense matrix his damage away anyway, and then he's a sitting duck once he used his Wraith form. So with Reaper seeing that boost in self-heal per shot and him just being able to foam tanks for sustain, first off for RagTagg, how's that going to affect your playstyle when you see a Reaper? Are you just going to swap, or are you going to try to play around that?
I'm going to shite myself. That's what I'm going to do. Because I was in a custom game earlier, just thinking about how this would affect me, and I was just putting an enemy AI Roadhog on me, and compared the live to the PTR, and I was hitting Roadhog right in the face and healed 140 HP.
Christ, oh my god!
With one shot. And it was, I don't know what the second shot would have healed, because I think I had myself on like 50 HP or 56 HP. And then, the first shot was 140 HP healed. That's just square on the chin, And then the second one obviously didn't have as far to go to get up to Reaper's max HP. But as an Orisa, I had a strategy before about what I would do. And by the way, I'm starting to second guess the maths I said before, because I was sat with the forum notes, the PTR notes in front of me, and they were saying that that Soldier 76's pulse rifle is going to do 16 damage a shot per armor, up from 14, which is an increase of 15%. So maybe it's not as bad as I was thinking. But if you take that aside and then say, okay, maybe it's not like a 40% hit to the armor, it's still Reaper healing up to 140 HP per shot. What can I do against that? What can I possibly? I mean, how am I supposed to duel? You just can't. That's the thing. Before there was some counterplay. Can you bait out the Wraithwalk because you've already dinked him, and have you got the shield in a position where you're able to make at least make enough of the barrier happen for you so you can maybe dance around it and make him walk through 2 shields essentially. All of that, it doesn't matter, because if you're dueling a Reaper now, you're going to get fucked, and I don't see any way with the current, with what they're putting on the PTR, that an Orisa will ever survive that. And it's early days. I was maybe, did I tell you this before the PTR, this discussion, that while I was playing, it's a disaster. Like bronze are playing against GMs, and diamonds are against golds, and it's you just can't tell how it's actually going to go. But my initial set of impressions are that a very, very skilled Reaper is going to quickly take apart systematically an unorganized team, and basically getting an Orisa in a corner is going to be very bad news. But I think that also then ties into how a Reaper would approach the front line in 2CP, or breaking through any kind of choke point. It's going to be a problem. I actually think I will switch. I'm saying that in a kind of a very flexible, happy-go-lucky way, but it's ripped to my SR right now. I don't actually know what the future is going to hold, because I wouldn't say I'm a one-trick Orisa, but I would definitely say I will try and play her in as many situations as possible. But I won't fight it if I see things going south like this so fast, because it will just feel like I'm effectively throwing. So I will just, I think I'll just get out of there straight away. I don't feel that great about it, but you weigh it up in terms of the way the game has been recently, and think, learn a new hero and get rid of that cancer that we've had for the last 6 months. Then I'll take that hit.
So that's kind of a bleak look into the future, potentially. Again, it's based on our first impressions for Orisa players in competitive play. Before we get into what Bert is gonna probably tell us about pro play or semi-pro play where there's more coordination, which we cannot expect. Obviously, we can try to speculate about, well, I play Orisa and I can hope for my McCree to land that flash right click, but if he doesn't, then I'm fucked. Like, we don't want to talk about that, because in solo queue, you're largely just relying on yourself and whoever you're queuing with anyway, if you do queue with anyone. But for me, as somebody who's been playing a lot of mystery heroes, an indication for me how strong a hero is how long can I survive with them when I am inherently bad with that character. Obviously, I'm only good at one character, but I love playing a whole range of them. And in my last video, my discussion with the Insomnia squad, with Nate and Birdie, I showed a clip of me playing D.Va on King's Row, living for like 8.5 minutes. And it's not like we were stomping them and I just wasn't ever contested. I lost my mech multiple times. I used my ultimate just to reset my mech over and over again to get away from Mace and all that stuff. I lived that entire game of over 8 minutes despite the enemies just pushing into us. And I can do that consistently. And I'm not even good on D.Va. So that to me indicates that the solo queue experience playing against D.Va, and also when I play against D.Va, it's obviously abysmal when I play anything that just gets all the damage eaten by her defense matrix. It must be abysmal in competitive play in solo queue playing against a good D.Va, when even a bad D.Va can get so much work done. The question now is obviously, with Overwatch League starting, and perhaps Jeff deciding to do this so we don't have goats in Overwatch League Season 2, what do you think is potentially the first thing that pro teams are going to look into in developing on this new patch? Birdie.
So the way I see this is I'm 100% with RagTagg. Like, Reaper that's freaking ridiculous, being able to heal 140 health in one shot. And I think Orisa's going to suffer mostly because, like, when you think about it, they're, like you said, they're nerfing their health pools, and she has the smallest health pool out of any tank in the game, and half of it is armor. So that's a huge nerf for her, which is one of the reasons why I said they should probably just give her more health to make her more viable. But with Reaper, it's like in ladder play a lot, what I would see is people, whenever an enemy team would run goats, if they're trying to counter that without running goats, what you should do is run a Junkrat or a Pharah. And what I would see some people do is, just play Reaper. And the reason that didn't work was because Reaper is, sure, he's really good at taking out tanks one-on-one, but he has to get really close to them, and he has to do it without being noticed in a position where they would be able to retaliate and get away from him. And the problem with that is Goats has 3 tanks, D.Va, Zarya, and Reinhardt, who are really good up close also, and a Brigitte and Zen and Lucio that are going to be there discording him and booping him away, that are all going to do damage to him at the same time, and he cannot take on 3 tanks at once. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, it's like he can only take down 1 tank at a time, not 3 at one time, when they're all going to do damage to him at the same time. So Reaper was never a viable counter to Goats in the first place, and I still don't think, like if you were to try to run a Reaper composition into a Goats composition, even on this new patch, I still don't think it would be good because of the amount of focus damage that would be coming out of it. But I still don't think Goats is going to be as viable, mainly because of the armor nerfs and the nerf to rally. But we will see when it comes out, because honestly, I don't know for sure. For all I know, Goats is still going to be the way to go. And the reason I say that is, like, when you think about, okay, so Reaper's strong now. He can take on tanks in normal compositions, and I think that he will be able to. He's one of those heroes that's really easy to learn, and then also really easy to master if you invest a lot of time into him. And because this kit's so simplistic anyway, and because of his ability to take on tanks, what I think is going to happen is you'll see a lot more Winston D.Va compositions, because like people always, and this is another thing I see in ladder all the time, is people will pick Reaper to counter Winston, and that will work only if the Reaper is an absolute idiot, or I'm sorry, the Winston is an absolute idiot. Because if I play Winston, I do play a lot of Winston. I play a lot of tank in general next to support. But if I'm playing Winston and I see them pick Reaper, I'm like, okay, fine, pick Reaper. I'm just not going to jump anywhere near you. And it's that easy for a lot of people. And even in pro play, that's all they do is like, it's why you never see Reaper in pro play. They just don't go near the Reaper. It's that easy. So I think you'll see a lot more Winston D.Va comps in that sense. If people try to run Reaper into your composition, it's like, just go Winston D.Va, because you have so much mobility, you can just stay away from him. And then, first picks are always going to be important. So once you get that first pick, it's like, then we can target focus that Reaper and actually take him out, even if it's with both our tanks. And defense matrix just straight up counters Reaper anyway. You can eat his entire ult with defense matrix, no matter what, as long as you know it's coming.
Yeah.
So that's some of the changes I see coming. Is Goats still might be a thing, but I think that it's going to be easier to counter, for one, with Pharah and Junkrat compositions. So that might actually be what kills Goats finally, because of the armor nerfs and because of the Brig nerf.
So Brig nerf, armor nerf, DM nerf might make Junkrat a viable option against Goats.
Yeah, Junkrat and Pharah would be a viable option to actually counter Goats now. It was always a viable option, but it really boiled down to which team was better anyway. So I think that's going to be a much more viable option to just straight up counter Goats, which is a good thing. I don't think anyone's really complaining about that. Reaper is going to be better in 2-2-2 comps, but he is, like, when you run into Reaper's Winston D.Va, and it's still counterable in that sense if you know what you're doing. And yeah, we're going to go back to a lot of general 2-2-2 comps, and especially with some of the nerfs Brigitte's been getting, Tracer might be coming back into the meta also, because you can't just one-shot a Tracer on Brig anymore. And
I just want your prediction, something I've been hoping for as a Zenyatta player. Do you think we'll see Zenyatta Lucio back again, especially with the dive tanks?
I really hope so, because Zenyatta Lucio is actually the most fun support combo to run, in my opinion.
You hope so, but do you think it's gonna happen?
I don't know.
Think it's realistic?
I say I don't know, because it doesn't change the fact that anti-nade is still so powerful.
Yeah.
That I think it's really going to boil down to what compositions are being run. I think general dive compositions with Winston D.Va, you might actually see Lucio Zen a lot more. But like Reinhardt, your Reinhardt Zarya comps, you'll be seeing, your Genjis with your nano blades and stuff like that, and Lucio Ana.
I'm so afraid of them nerfing Zenyatta now, because he's always been a tank buster, and now that tanks get weaker with their armor, it might be even more apparent, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Well, I think this was a surprisingly fruitful discussion from a lot of... I mean, okay, we did leave out the DPS perspective a bit. We don't really have a DPS player. I don't think it matters that much to me personally, because to me, tanks and supports were always like the very core foundation of how Overwatch is played, and really all about enabling the DPS. And the DPS just have to be there and do their job, essentially. And sure, there's more you can say in regards how the DPS is gonna be affecting all that, but I think I'm happy with where we went here today. We spent a good half an hour talking about this. I think we got a lot of information out there, and one last time, this was just our first impression. God knows what's going to happen in the next month, especially with Overwatch League coming out. And but I guess we're going to call it here. I want to say thank you, Birdie, so much for being here once again. Insomnia Squad for life, as well as RagTagg. RagTagg, where can people find you?
Usually at the bottom of a barrel somewhere, fast asleep. And by the way, I just want to say a little shout out to everyone who's going to get fucked plat and below by these Reaper changes. You're all going to get absolutely shafted. The rest of it'll be all sunshine and roses at the top of the ladder and everything, but down at the bottom, God help you all with these changes to Reaper. I think you're all going to get absolutely shat on. But yeah, sorry,
He's not wrong.
I'd been saving that up. I actually think it's going to be a disaster down there. But yeah, because I don't think they run. Nobody runs goats down there. I don't think they'd run anything in that way. I think it's all kind of 2-2-2, and yeah. Anyway,
That's
sorry.
that's what I was talking about. Those are the people that are diving into Reapers on Winston. So yeah, there you go. Have fun.
But yeah, GG.
No reason. Might want to play Warframe instead. Somebody got really upset in the comment section. I mentioned Warframe over Paladins. Let me put this clear. I don't play Paladins. I tried Paladins. I didn't like it. That's why I said Warframe, because I hear
Warframe is awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's great for you to play. Awesome. I only ever hear good things about Warframe. So that's why I said it's an example. But yeah, link's going to be on screen. Do you stream on YouTube now, or are you also on Twitch, Rag?
I'm on both. I'm diversifying my revenue, I'll have you know. It's quite a clever thing to do, you see. And I was streaming on Twitch for like 16 months or 17 months. I'll just do a YouTube one, and I smashed the viewer count straight away because people know me from the YouTube more than the Twitch. So there you go. Yeah, both, basically.
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you so much again for taking your time to talk with us today.
No worries.
And also thank to everyone who watched this video and sat through this entire thing. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell notification to be notified of all the notifications. And I hope to see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I always love that. It's like delayed bye.